Let's go!
And we are live. What's going on, people? Welcome to another episode of the Off the Ball podcast with me, your host, Chris LeBron. I am the owner of the Off the Ball Network as well, and we are live on YouTube. We're on Facebook. We're on everything right now, so make sure to follow on Facebook, retweet on Twitter, and give us a sub on YouTube. We're trying to get to that 300 mark and continue to grow. Today we got a great show on deck for you guys, so sit back, enjoy. We're gonna dive into everything NBA. The offseason has been obviously crazy. We're gonna talk about everything in free agency. I got a couple great guys with me, so we're gonna discuss our favorite moves, our least favorite moves. You know, is KD going to return to Brooklyn? Is Spida going to the Knicks? The Knicks are finally gonna get their star. All right. And we're going to discuss my guys' teams. So we're going to talk San Antonio Spurs. Are they in tank mode? Are the Spurs tanking? With our luck, with the real luck, they'll get the number one pick again. And we'll talk Miami Heat in the future. And we'll talk, of course, we're going to talk some New York Knicks. But let me introduce my special guest on today's show. And like I said, today's show is going to be a great one. So my guest, the VP of the Off the Ball Network, they call him Solo Cup Mo Murphy, up in flames. What's good, baby?
Hey, what's going on, bro? You know, it's been a minute. It's been a minute since we did a show together. But obviously, being able to talk Knicks, Heat, Spurs, off season, like I had to make an appearance on your show, bro. It's been a while, so I'm glad to be back on here.
Round of applause. And the guy who probably would get the most boos. The man, the myth, the legend, Walker Bailey. What's up, Walker?
No.
Oh, they continue. The boos are not stopping, Walker.
Not a whole lot. Just kind of toughing it out. Anytime I can get on and talk a little bit of Spurs and then just talk the league in general, it's an opportunity. So I'm glad to be here. The Spurs projected for 23.5 wins, and that's 23.5 too many for my taste. So.
And yes, we're going to dive into the Spurs and what the future is. They made some moves this offseason, and obviously we're going to talk Miami. We're going to get to Knicks. So let's get right into it. Obviously, free agency has come. It's simmered down, but we had some crazy stuff going on. Trade demands and all that. So let's get right into it, guys. Mo, you go first. Give me a move. What's been your favorite move so far of this offseason, whether it's trade, whether it's an extension, whether it's a signing that you like the most this offseason? And then give me one that you're just perplexed. Like, what? They did that?
So, all right. So I really haven't been a huge fan of a lot of moves because I feel like people have overpaid, trade Minnesota. For instance, I mean, they gave up everything for Rudy Gobert. And like last time I checked, Rudy Gobert isn't Joel Embiid or Nikola Jokic. But I mean, what I loved is that everybody's getting paid. Everybody's eating. I mean, Zion signed a crazy extension and he's played basically a full season in 3 years, essentially. John Morant got fed a full plate. Devin Booker, really, I think the biggest winners is the young guys, bro. Like all the guys who haven't even entered their prime yet, the type of money they're making, and including Nikola Jokic. And I know it's been a lot of backlash for a lot of these guys getting paid, right? Because they're like, well, they haven't won anything. Why should they get paid? But it's like, bro, that's the cost of doing business. Like, you don't get paid based on team success. You get paid based on individual performance. And so all these guys that got paid, maybe outside of Zion, but you pay them on projection and you're a small market and you understand if you had hesitated signing Zion to that extension, that, he would have left, obviously, and he would have went to a bigger market. Like, he's not staying in New Orleans if he doesn't feel wanted. And the minute he would have not felt wanted, he'd have been like, all right, cool, I'm not re-signing and I'll go somewhere else. I'll even play my year out with a restricted free agent. I'll let y'all match the offer, a la DeAndre Ayton, but I'll end up dipping at some point. So for me, the offseason was all about the young guys. Like, it's just the Devin Booker, John Morant, everybody. But if I talk about just acquisitions, I'm a huge fan of the DeJounte Murray to the Atlanta Hawks. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think you're going to be able to, I think Trae Young's going to benefit with having a guy play alongside him that can distribute the ball, have Trae Young play some off ball. Like, I think that's going to help the growth of Trae Young. And like, coming into the league, we knew it wasn't Steph, but we always look to compare a guy to the great before them.
Mhm.
And so Trae Young is the most comparable to Stephen Curry. And so I think with him being able to have an opportunity to learn the off-ball aspect that makes Steph as well so dangerous, because we know Steph with the ball in his hands is arguably the most dangerous player in the league. But what adds to it is Steph can play off the ball, come off screens, get every shot he wants, no matter what kind of defense you play. Golden State will always find a way to get him open. I think Atlanta can start doing the same thing. But I think the DeJounte Murray and Trae Young is like, I mean, what is that, a top 3 backcourt in the conference? Maybe even like, I think it's by the end of the year, we're talking about they're a top 3 backcourt in the league, period, point blank. So as far as moves go, I think the DeJounte Murray to Atlanta is the one that really sticks out to me as far as it makes sense. I don't feel like they necessarily overpaid to get DeJounte Murray. And it also showed that Atlanta is committed to building around Trae Young and trying to get back to form of that team that made it to the Eastern Conference Finals, whether you think it was valid or not. They committed to improving. They committed to making their star happy in satisfying Trae Young and making sure that, like, hey, we're dedicated to you and we're trying to make moves for us to put you in the best position to be a winner. So I think the DeJounte Murray trade is the one that stands out, that like, there's not a lot of moves I love, but I did love that one. Like that's definitely one. And I hate to say it because not only are they in the same conference, but they're in the same division as the Miami Heat. But, you got to give credit when credit's due. And Atlanta did what they had to do to get a guy like DeJounte Murray. And they didn't even hesitate. The minute it was an opportunity for them to get DeJounte Murray, they got to the drawing board, got what they needed to do, called San Antonio, hey, what's it going to cost? And they paid the cost. So, shout out to Atlanta for making the immediate move. I mean, that was one of the groundbreaking moves before any big-time free agent signings happened anyways.
Yeah. And you mentioned, DeJounte, playing off the ball with Trae Young and all that. And that's the one thing Nate McMillan had really stressed, like with Trae, like they're working on that aspect. Like you said, he gets a lot of Steph comps, but what does Steph do the best? He plays best, no pun intended, off the ball. And that's what you wanted to see with, now you got 2 guys who can handle the rock like that. Someone's going to, Trae playing off the ball, is going to be key in that. And so obviously that's a huge trade that happened, and that impacts, Walker, your San Antonio Spurs. So first, talk to me about that move. How did you feel about it? Did you think it was a good move? Did you get it? Did you feel like the Spurs got a good return? Because the Spurs, so just to go over that deal, and it happened June 30th. Obviously DeJounte goes to the Hawks. In return, Danilo Gallinari, who wound up being waived, is now with the Boston Celtics. A 2003 first-round pick that was from like 8 different teams. It felt like that pick. 2025 first-round pick, a 26 pick swap, and then a 2027 first-round pick. So three first and a swap. So Walker, how did you feel about that move?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like it was necessary. I felt like they got a fair return. I mean, we've talked about this a lot. In order for you're playing to win a championship, and could the Spurs have built something around DeJounte to potentially be better than they were? Yes. But there was no path for them with DeJounte Murray to win a championship. Mm-hmm. Not anytime soon. I mean, it involves superstars, and DeJounte Murray is not that. And B, you're not acquiring that through free agency or trade because they didn't really before last week have the pick haul to do that. And then they really didn't. They can't sign free agents. So I thought it was necessary. It is what it is. I thought it was good I think it was one of those rare trades where, you come out and you're like, oh yeah, both parties did really well. Because now, the Spurs get to wait for those picks, the Atlanta picks, to convey until, Trae and DeJounte are both older. They're both getting closer to 30. Maybe they've split up. Maybe Trae's gone somewhere else. Who knows? It's far enough away where the variance there. the variance there in terms of Atlanta's team building could come into play, and who knows what those are going to look like. And they're completely unprotected, so that's always a win.
That's a win. That is a win.
That is a win. So, we'll see on the 2023 first. It came from the Hornets. It's protected 1 through 16, which the Hornets are probably going to be right on that number. Like, that feels pretty close to right around where they're going to be. So we'll see whether or not that conveys. I think it's protected 1 through 16 and 23, 1 through 16 and 24. And then if it hasn't conveyed by 25, it turns into 2 second-round picks. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you hope the Hornets win so you can pull that middle of the first round first and get an extra one. But, I mean, I thought it was necessary from the Spurs. I honestly don't think the Spurs have gone far enough to tearing this thing down. So I think they need to go a step further. I think Jakob Poeltl needs to be on a new team by training camp. If it were me, Keldon Johnson would be on a new team by training camp, but that's not an option anymore.
Hey, Keldon Johnson just got 4 years, $80 million.
Yeah, so, 4 for 80, and that's a fair value for what he is likely going to be. But and the more I've thought about it, the more it makes sense. But from the DeJounte trade, I thought it was necessary. And if I'm the Spurs, I mean, you're already projected to be the worst team in the NBA. So you may as well continue to tear it down. And now with the way the draft lottery works, you really just have to get in that top 3 to have a chance. So, there's no benefit to finishing, with the worst record or the second worst record or whatever else. You're not any more likely to finish 1 if you finish worse than if you finish 3rd worst. So the goal is just to be one of the 3 worst teams in the league. So we'll see. I mean, I think they're in pole position for that. So, and I think that's necessary. They have to find a way to draft stars. Whether
we talked about that a lot, right? With that, you guys have a lot of good young players, and it's kind of like with my team too, with the Knicks. Like, we got some good young pieces, but you need that in order to have success in this league. You need stars. You need at least a star that that is transcendent.
Yeah,
and the Spurs don't have that.
You're not gonna, and even if they draft, a superstar, it's gonna be hard to recruit people to San Antonio, even with the no income tax and all that different stuff. But I think if you're bad because keep in mind, if they draft whoever the next big thing is, 1st, 2nd overall next year, he's not going to jump in and immediately impact winning in a way that you're going to immediately be good in 2024. So there's a chance that you can pair multiple of those guys. And when you're a competent drafting organization, the way the Spurs are, that's something you can do. And then you have a chance in the later first rounds where if you want to let some of these guys walk that can't prove themselves, you can try to fill the rest of your roster in the late first round, and there's no pressure on you to add stars. So because you've already done that with your own pick, which you secured by being the worst team in the league. Yeah. So that's the goal. I think that's what they're shooting for. I think the goal is probably 3 years of this, three years of the tanking stuff, and then probably build from there. So we'll see.
So give me a winner and a loser from this free agency.
I thought an underrated move and one that makes a lot of sense. I thought the KCP going to Denver made a ton of sense. That was a team that really lacked defensive prowess pretty much everywhere. And I thought that KCP, who, shot well from 3 and can guard pretty much the other team's best player anywhere 1 through 3, is going to be something that helps Denver a lot. It's going to allow them to hide their better offensive players in that starting lineup. They lost Will Barton, but again, I thought the KCP move made a ton of sense for Denver. I thought they got better. I mean, it's not the type of move that wins you a championship, but it's the type of move that maybe increases your regular season win total by like 3 or 4, just simply on the fact that you can guard other teams now. So we'll see. I thought, but that was one that I immediately thought I liked from a trade perspective, and then free agency perspective. I was pretty much going to like wherever Tyus Jones ended up with whatever he got.
Yeah, we talked about him a lot, especially in the
chat. And I thought Memphis securing him for less than $15 million a year was a major win. It's basically an insurance policy. If anything ever happens to Ja, it keeps you competitive. And if, Ja's healthy, then it allows Tyus to run your second unit, and you have the best second unit point guard in the league. So that's always a plus, always a positive. So
yeah, and like you said, but Ja's missed some time. He missed a lot of time last year. And imagine if they didn't have Tyus Jones last year, like things could have went off the rails. But you have that security blanket in Tyus. No, okay, he's not Ja Morant at all, but I think he had one of the highest, assist to turnover ratios in NBA history. So he's safe with the ball. He's not going to turn the ball over. All right. So, like I said, he's not going to do what Ja does, but he's not going to mess it up for you. Like for a few games, him being the starter, that's good. And what they got him 2 years, I think like $30 million. That's good insurance. That's a good insurance. And that might have been the biggest move they made. I know they re-signed Ja to the Supermax and all that, but getting Tyus Jones back was it, because that's not easy to find a backup point guard of Tyus Jones caliber. There's not a lot of Tyus Jones out there. So to get him back on a good deal, that to me that was a good move. Good move for them. But were there extensions that you guys were like, and I have one, and I'm going to talk about this guy.
I think we all have the same one.
I think we all have the same one, but I'm going to talk about Bradley Beal and Mo.
That's where I was going.
All right, so Bradley Beal, 3 ups, 5 years, $251 million. Like that's a lot of money. I think only once he's gotten out of the first round, I believe, and that was when they had Paul Pierce on the team. So like it's been a while since he's done a lot. And listen, I'm player empowerment, play all this, get your money, all that. Good for him that he got that deal. But the man and a no trade clause. That doesn't happen. I could think it's a handful of times, maybe a little bit more. You can count my toes too that guys have gotten no trade clauses in there. Not KD don't even have. I thought KD had one just because he's that great. I'm like, of course he has one. He doesn't even have one. So like Bradley Beal, like he's getting paid as if he is the guy. He's the highest paid player in the league, right?
Nah, Jokic got him.
Jokic got him. Okay, but he's there. He's up there, right?
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely crazy that a guy like that is getting this much money. And I understand Washington's perspective. You want to be relevant. You have to keep your guy. He's homegrown. Blah 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 blah. I think that's absolutely crazy to give him that much money. He has obviously he's a bucket. We all know that he got game, but he's dirty. The impact for me, I don't think of him as a true number one impact guy that's gonna get you on his back, get you to at least the second or conference finals. This is not. I mean, they've struggled with him being the guy lately. It's like I just don't get like why they have felt they need to do it, because they're gonna regret it. They probably regret it already. I just don't get why teams do this stuff. They're going to regret it immediately, and it caps you out. And it's not like, all right, we re-signed them and we got all these pieces out. We could at least get to the second round. They may beat me a play-in team, maybe. I'm just saying, at best, maybe a play-in team. That's it. This is an expensive roster to be a play-in. They got Porzingis too. Like they got a bunch of content. Like, oh my god, what? Like I don't get why team like if they had said, you know what, Brad, we're just not gonna. We don't think it. I would have been cool with that. I think too many teams feel like they're forced into having to give these guys these crazy max deals because they don't want to be the team that lets them go, blah blah blah. Like they should have thought about trading this man, because giving them that much money is insane. Like they were just better off just blowing it up and just starting fresh and just trying to go there. I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel. I think talk about it. I think you guys maybe think how I'm thinking, but that max, I mean, Dame too. Dame got 2 years and like $700 million. I think that's absurd. I love Dame, but this is absurd, guys. This is crazy, and it's only going to get worse.
It's
only going to get worse.
It's because these teams that aren't primary free agent destinations want to do right by their own guys, and so that way, like, it doesn't send a message to the league necessarily, but it also, like, that's kind of the goal. It sends the message to the league that if you perform, then you'll get paid, and that's attractive to some people. And I guess that's part of it. Like, you pay your guys, it sends a message to the locker room. If you perform, then you're going to get paid. You treat your people the right way. But there comes a point where treating your people the right way interferes with your business goals, and I think that's where we got to here.
It's a business, and it's just a business. And I know a lot of people tend not to bring the business side. I don't care. I always think about business, and the Washington Wizards as a business. This is not a good business move. It is not a good business move. I would just rather hey, let's just blow this thing up because we're going to be in purgatory. We're going to be in purgatory and then have him on the books for the next 4 to 5 years. And he has a no trade clause. So even if we want to trade him, guess what? We can't. If we want to trade him to Sacramento, and because they give us the best offer, they're going to give us Keegan Murray and Donovan Mitchell and all this. We can't.
Well, that's the type.
Now we got to send him to a team he wants to go to and may not get the assets we want. So now you just. They could have gave him the deal. Okay, whatever. I don't think that's good. But then they gave him a no trade clause.
Yeah,
that's insane. That's where I was like, oh, this is horrible. They probably regret it already. They regret it. They have to. This is all hard.
That's the type of deal. That's the type of deal you really are gonna like. If you don't regret it now, you're gonna regret it when he can't create separation at age 33. And
he struggled last year. Remember, Dame, Harden, Beal, beginning of the year, they were all struggling. Remember the new rule changes and all that? They were struggling. Brad was shooting like 23% from three, averaging like 21, shooting like high 30s at one point. And Trae Young too. Those guys were struggling. And he's injury prone, missed a lot of season. Like, hell, they look better sometimes without him. No, but it's like, oh, let's give him $251 million because we need a face of the franchise. But this, like, even though it makes horrible business sense, I'm not trying to crap on Beal. Good, you get your money. Good for him.
Here's another thing too. Here's from a business perspective, something that a lot of people don't think about is that, and I'm not saying the Wizards have bad owners, but I'm saying that when you have owners that all they care about is selling jerseys and selling tickets, from a business perspective in terms of lining their own pockets, a Bradley Beal type person who is the face of a franchise is necessary in order to make those levels of moves. So if you have owners that aren't committed to winning, and I don't know that they do or don't, but if that's the case, then from a business decision standpoint, the Wizards ownership looks at this as a good business decision because they're going to make a ton of money off of Bradley Beal jerseys, t-shirts, probably some ticket sales because people are going to come watch him play, and they'd rather go through that and try to build around him, which is a bad idea, than be horrible and make no money for the next few years. And so that's from a business standpoint. A lot of times, you'll have bad owners look at stuff that way. It's do I really care if we win a championship or not if I get the multi-million-dollar check to put in my bank account at the end of the year? So I mean, and you run into that problem, man. And it's not just in basketball; it's in every sport. But here, I mean, there's certainly owners that are like that, and so I don't know. I really don't know. I'm not familiar. I don't even know who owns the Wizards, but I mean, that's another way that you could look at it, where an owner comes down and tells a GM that he's got to make that offer. I mean, the way that typically goes is you make that offer, or I'm going to find someone who will. So,
Ted Leonis, I think he owns the hockey team. What's the hockey team called again? The Capitals. Yeah, I think he owns the Capitals too. But and he's been low. I think if this is the same, I don't think this is the same owner that with Gilbert Reese that because Gilbert had mentioned the low. I could be the different owner, but just I don't know. Mo, man, you know how I feel about this. How you feel about this whole Brad extension?
So y'all know where I'm coming from. I'm coming from a different angle than y'all are. I'm not focused on the money. I don't care if Washington decided to pay him what they paid him. Hey, do what you got to do. Small markets got to overpay for guys, to keep the guys there, or else they go somewhere else. But here's my message. Damian Lillard, Bradley Beal, shut up. Don't say nothing else about winning is the most important thing to you. I don't want to hear nothing about it because you talked and then your actions told me that it's about the bag, which is okay. I have no problem with Dame signing the 2 years, $121 million, making $60 million a year. Get the money. Dame Lillard gonna make almost as much as LeBron as far as contract earnings by the time his extension kicks in. I have no problem with that. The problem I have is that Dame tries to crap on everybody who bounces around or goes to another team to seek a championship and does that or comes very close. Chris Paul kind of bounced around the past couple years, been in OKC, been in Houston, been in Phoenix. Chris Paul also carried a team that had no business being in the playoffs to the playoffs, 7-game series first round. Chris Paul goes to a team who hadn't been to the playoffs, takes them to the NBA Finals. LeBron James has bounced around, won a championship everywhere he's went. Who else has bounced around? I mean, if you want to talk about Jimmy Butler, left Chicago, went to Miami, has been to NBA Finals, has been to 2 conference finals, and has been to NBA Finals. Whether you want to validate it because it's in the bubble or not, doesn't matter. It's still more than what Dame has done. So I don't care about validation. But you get on here and you tell us that winning is the most important thing. I want to win more than anything. And then when it's time for you to make the decision for yourself, who gives me the best opportunity to win, you sign those big contracts. I have, like I said, I don't come from a place where I'm upset with Bradley Beal signing for 5 years, $250, because I'm going to be honest. I'd have did the same thing. I ain't upset with Dame extending 2 years, $120 million, $60 million a year, because I would have did the same thing. So I'm not upset from the money standpoint and get your money, change your family's life. You good for generations. It's generational wealth is what we call it. I'm all for that. But do not tell me how important winning is to you when you made the move to show me that you don't care about winning. Yes, it will mean everything to Dame to win a championship in Portland. Let's project the next 5 years. Portland ain't winning a thing. They are a borderline play. They are a play-in team right now as we speak. I don't care that they got Jeremy Grant. I don't care about none of the moves they made. They are a play-in team next year. If they're lucky, they're a 5 seed, and I'm talking about super luck. There's got to be a lot of injuries that happen. So they are a play-in team at best, and I think they're a 9 or 10 as opposed to 7 or 8. But you keep telling me winning, and then Dame, where he pisses me off is he makes these rap, he makes his albums, and he gets on these platforms, and he talks about everybody bouncing around, and I'm loyal to the soil. That's his thing, right? Like loyal to the soil is Dame's kind of slogan. I know it's been around for a while, but Dame embraced the loyal to the soil slogan. And then you sign that deal. And I get it. Like you could have rode your contract out and been a free agent. I get it. But here's my thing. Don't tell me you want to win and then you don't make the winning move. You should have asked that. If winning was the most important thing to you, if winning a championship, there is no right way to do it no more. The right way is if I can't do it here, I'm going to find somewhere to go to do it. That's the right way now. A lot of and I know Golden State and Boston have built within, but like everybody else is like, okay, maybe it's not superstars joined together. I do get that, but it's like it's not going to happen in Portland. Like Golden State has built it for years to the point where they're at right now. Damian Lillard ain't got enough time on his clock for a rebuild. Like you can't rebuild Portland around Dame. Dame's what, 33 years old, 34? Like you can't even rebuild. 32. He's 32. He'll be 33 next season. So you can't even rebuild around Dame. Like you don't rebuild around a 33-year-old, 32, 33-year-old, period, point blank. Like you rebuild around a Bradley Beal. Like you could rebuild in Washington around Bradley Beal. I don't think that's a championship, but I'm just saying like he's entering his prime. You could rebuild around him. That's my only problem is they've told all of us that winning is the most important thing. Bradley Beal told it so much, he almost had us convinced that he was leaving. Because he put it in our minds so much that winning was so important. And so all of us would say, well, you ain't going to do it in Washington, so you must be leaving. Like that's everybody's takeaway from all that. And then he signs that deal. Get your money, bro. I ain't mad at you. But I don't want to hear nothing about winning the most important thing to you at this point. Even if you're like, I want to win in Washington, you're not going to win in Washington. The Wizards ain't been title contenders in my lifetime. Period. Point blank. They've been a playoff team. They might can win a series. I don't even think the Wizards have made a conference finals in my lifetime, let alone been a contender.
No, they have. But just think about this deal. It's 5 years, $251 million. The annual, it averages out to $50 million a year.
Washington had to do it though. Like they either had to do it or let him walk.
At 33 years old. Like I said, he has a no trade clause, right? And it's the last year is a player option, but he's not declining that. Let's just say he's going to accept that because it's at $57 million. So most likely he's going to opt into that. So you're going to have him under contract for 5 more years. And listen, get your money, bro. Get as much money as humanly possible. But unless his play is, and with then he has a 50% trade kicker too. So if he does get traded, he's just gonna get more money. So
yeah,
it's crazy. It's great. Unless the plan is all right, I'm gonna get my money. I'm gonna go do this for a year. But I just feel like
I have a problem with
wasting years. You're wasting years. Like,
I don't even care about wasting years. If he signed it and got the bag and plans on asking out, I have a problem with that too. And I think Adam Silver has spoken on it where they got to figure it out. And I know the players aren't going to fully agree with that, but like if his intentions weren't to stay in Washington for 5 years, and you can't project the next 5 years, but if you sign that contract with intentions of like, all right, I'm going to thug it out for 2 more years here and then I'm going to ask out, like I have a problem with that too, because like at the same time, like players don't owe organizations anything. Organizations don't owe players anything, to be honest. Like at the end of the day, there's the type of stature that you have to build for organization to owe you the loyalty, and that's the Stephs and Tim Duncans and Kobe Bryants of the world. Like I don't even think organizations owe LeBron James because he stays there through a contract and he probably dips anyway. So they don't even owe LeBron. Like that's Steph, Duncan, Kobe, Magic type players, guys who are lifers at those organizations and playing through their prime. That's when you owe them on the back end or whatever. Even Miami like felt like they owed D Wade or whatever, and that's why D Wade left, because they didn't give him what he felt like they owed him. With him supposed to have been a Heat lifer, but bro, if you sign that contract with intentions of like, oh, I'm gonna give it a year or two and then I'm gonna ask out, I think that's BS too. I don't think that should be happening. Like if you sign a 5-year deal, I think obligated you can't request a trade until after year 3, going into year 4. And the reason I say that now, if the organization decides to trade you, okay, but they should have all the say. So if you're going to sign 5 years, because that 5th year is a player option. So essentially trading you going into year 4 of your contract, you could opt out. Most people don't because they probably don't have the same value in year 5 that they do, but you can't request a trade. You can't ask out for 3 years because that 4th year is like, okay, well, he does have a player option. He could opt out if he's really that unsatisfied. But if he requests a trade, we could trade him to save those organizations like Washington. We're like, all right, we don't allow him to walk for nothing. But at the same time, like we get as much as we can out of him. All right, it's year 4. He's not going to decline the player option, but we'll get him out of here. We'll do him a due diligence and we don't lose him for nothing. But if you sign a 5-year deal, I think you should have to play 3 years without requesting a trade. What the organization decides to do, all right, if they decide to trade you, because somebody could call and be like, hey, we'll give you this, and this, a deal for Bradley Beal that you can't turn down. But to ask out, like if he asks out after next year, I lose all respect. I've already lost respect, but I'll lose all respect if he asks, because I'll be like, okay, he went to the bag, but then put winning, and he basically finessed the system where he's like, okay, I'm going to get my bag. I'm going to play here for a year, but all in all, winning is the most important thing to me, but not at the expense of my money. So I'm going to screw the Wizards over by signing this deal and then making my contract where some people might think it's untradeable or whatever, or you'll screw the next team over that you want to play for, because having to make up for $50 million, I mean, you're trading 2-3 players off the rip just to match salaries. Like that's 3 players gone just to match salaries, let alone now we're talking about draft picks and another player or two for it to be worth my while if I'm the Washington Wizards. So I don't know, bro. If you want to get the bag and you want to make $500 million by the end of your career and you sign for $250 million, do that. But don't tell me winning is the most important thing.
Yeah, and I think that's something we're going to see in the next collective bargaining agreement. And
we should. I really think we should.
And 4 years. I believe like they can terminate it by the end of this year, but I know it ends the end of the next NBA season, so 23-24. Something's got to give, right? I think that the owners are kind of getting tired of the players running stuff, and there's got to be some type of middle ground, right? There's got to be some type of, okay, yeah, I just can't just sign new contracts and be like, I'm out. Like the KD situation, essentially, right? He signed a 4-year deal and then he's like, all right, I want out. And it's like, okay, it's one thing if you had a year left on your deal. This is me talking as the owner. It's one thing if you had a year left in your deal and things aren't going the way, but dude, you signed a 4-year extension.
You
Like,
got 4 years left.
you
Like
got
you're
4
you're-
years left. Like, and I think this is the where it kicks in, right? This is the start of the 4-year
Yeah.
extension. So like, dude, like we got 4 years of this. Like, you signed the contract, and I get that aspect. Walker, how do you feel about like all that? Like, because like I said, the CBA, this has been a hot thing going on with the CBA, and we didn't even have this plan to talk about it, but this is very interesting. And like I said, the CBA is coming up. I think they could terminate it this year. I think they have to like November, December. Let me get exactly. Let me read off exactly. The NBA's current collective bargaining agreement began 2017-2018. It runs through 23-24 season ending June 30th, 24. Both the NBA and the Players Association can terminate the CBA of June 30th of 2023. If either the NBA or the Players Association wants to terminate the CBA, they have to do it by December 15th of this year. What do you think is going to be, the big thing with that?
I think the league and the owners are going to be. I mean, at some point it's not worth it for them to, trade players anymore. It's okay. You know what? You signed a deal. You're going to hang out here for however many years and you're just done. Like, you're just done because it's just, you see so many players and like KD's the latest. I mean, they'll sign for the bag and it's like, all right, I got my bag now. I'm going to request a trade, and now I'm going to go compete for a championship, and I care about winning. And so many franchises are becoming victims of that. I mean, I think to an extent we're seeing Utah a little bit of it. I mean,
that's what happened in Brooklyn. Brooklyn was doing everything the way like I think most teams want to do it, right? Like, and because they got screwed with the trade from the previous regime and all that, but they kind of build it back up because they got DeAndre Russell, some good young player. They got the picks, they finally got their picks back in order, and then they had an opportunity to get KD and Kyrie, and they tried it, didn't work, and now it's like whoa. And then they got I totally forgot about James Harden. They went and got James Harden, trade all their picks. So and now. Everything went
Ben Simmons, like
everything went to shit, and now they're like, oh, now we're kind of screwed because we can't. It's not like we'll just trade KD whatever and we'll tank. No, we can't tank because guess what? Houston has our pick, so even if we do tank and we lose 65 games, get the number one pick, it goes to Houston. So like they're in it like that's a crappy like so they're trying to figure it out, but they're like,
I don't think
KD, we get for you the contract, and you want out like.
I don't think in the next CBA that the NBA is going to be like cool with, especially the way James Harden went about things. It's like, all right, I requested my trade and you didn't trade me. All right, I'm going to come in fat as shit.
That has to change.
Like
that was disrespectful.
That's the type of stuff. Like, you're cratering organizations like that. You're cratering teams, and that's just not the way that the league's going to work. Like, you can go in if you want to request a trade, that's fine, but there's got to be something beyond like. Because to these guys, docking them a couple $100,000,
that's nothing.
That's nothing. Like they'll write the check. Like, and I think as long as that's the only punishment that's there for those type of guys, nothing's ever going to change. And like it's like I tell people all the time, like the players, and they don't seem to get and understand this, but like the player movement was great, but the player movement is also why we just witnessed some of the worst playoff basketball we've seen in a really long time. Like. That's why the postseason was so full of blowouts. Was because of these players moving around and doing all this type of stuff, and like they think they're doing what's best, and for them it's a competitive thing. But what they don't realize is what they're doing is further cratering the competitive balance of the league and also making the product a worse product. So
yes, yeah, because
if that's what they want, if that's what they want for their league, if that's what they want to do, then go for it. But I don't think the league is going to go for that, and so. I think that's why in the next CBA, I think, in CBA negotiations in all sports, there's things that each side cares about very dearly and they're not willing to budge on, and then they'll compromise on a lot of the rest of the stuff. I think this is one of those things that the league is going to be like, nah, like we're fixing this. This is not going to continue.
Yeah. They something's got to change. And we'll see what happens. I know Mo, we don't have you for too much longer, but I want to get into another big trade we saw this offseason, and that was Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert, I mean, talk about a haul. Talk about a haul. I'm going to pull up the trade, see if I can get it up. But it was a trade unlike we've rarely seen. So obviously, Rudy Gobert is traded from the Utah Jazz to the Minnesota Timberwolves. So they just got Rudy Gobert. They gave up Malik Beasley, Patrick Beverly, Leandro Bomero, Walker Kessler, who they took in the first, who was a first-round pick, Jared Vanderbilt, and 4 picks and a pick swap. First-round picks and a pick swap. One of those first-round picks is protected.
Nothing of substance. It's just draft picks, basically.
It's just a bunch of draft picks and then like some role players around it. But it's a lot for a guy of Rudy. Now, obviously, Rudy Gobert is a 3-time defensive player of the year. You know what? He's definitely a very good player, but it was a lot for a guy who's probably like a tier 3 type of NBA player. Not quite a superstar, but
the Knicks.
But he got traded as if he was a superstar.
Yeah. Well, the Knicks are really pissed at the Timberwolves,
and it messes up the trade market for, and right after this we're gonna talk about the Knicks and Donovan Mitchell, like where when you're hearing 8 first-round picks, minimum 5, so that trade kind of just turned heads when it happened. So Mo, you go first. How do you feel about the Rudy Gobert trade and everything involved that, because it was one of the wildest trades we've ever seen?
I mean, I think it benefits Minnesota in a sense. Just like you could kind of move Cat to the 4 now. He doesn't have to focus on back to the basket type of basketball.
Cat thinks he's a wing. So
yeah,
at 7 foot 250. So with all them threes he shoots.
What was he shooting almost like in the high 30s from the 3-point line? Like he is a guy who can play from outside in. So I think it benefits, like, okay, he doesn't have to be that big man where he's got to play with his back to the basket in certain aspects. But I don't even look at it from a Minnesota and Utah standpoint. I look at it from the rest of the league. Yeah, and you think about who's available. Kyrie Irving's available. Donovan Mitchell is available. Kevin Durant is available. And who knows who will be available in the next coming weeks? Who knows who will be available in the next year or two? But that set the standard. Like, if Utah got this for Rudy Gobert, now you're like, okay, tier 3 guy, top 20 guy, top 5 center, maybe top 20 guy, top 5 center. So they got this, and now we're talking about Kyrie Irving, who went on the court, one of the most talented guys with the ball in his hands, period, that you probably ever laid your eyes on. Mm-hmm. Kevin Durant, we're talking about top 3-4 player in the league right now. Yeah. Donovan Mitchell, we're talking about a top 3 guy at his position, top 4. Like, I mean, top 5 for sure, but I'd say probably top 3 at his position right now, especially since some of the guys that were at the top of that position are aging out. So you're like, okay, Donovan Mitchell has more value because he's a guy who brings the ball up the floor. Like, he's a guard. So he has more value than Rudy Gobert to other teams. And you're seeing that now with the alleged, I mean, nothing has been substantial. We got beat writers and insiders that we listen to, but we can never confirm that what they're telling us is 100% accurate, right? What is his name? Ian Begley is like, he's almost like the voice of the Knicks, essentially. Like, if something's going
Ian
on,
Begley,
yeah, and he speaks on it. Like, as a Knicks fan, like, you're gonna rock with it. Like, okay, he's the insider, he's the guy he's our go-to guy when it comes to the Knicks stuff. And it's like the trade that he even talked about is like, we don't know if that's for sure, but like, we're not going to shut down what he said because he's the guy. Like, I don't know. He knows. Mm-hmm. So you're like, bro, I mean, we're talking about what? They were talking about 4 young guys and 6 first-round picks for Donovan Mitchell. Like, and we're talking about guys who are kind of either important or have projected role of importance going forward to the Knicks, where we look at Minnesota and we're like, all right, Pat Bev is replaceable. All right, Jared Vanderbilt, decent young guy, but whatever. Like, the players we don't even care about, but it set the standard that 4 players, 5 picks, 5 first-round picks is what it costs to get Rudy Gobert. So now, what do you think it's going to cost to get Donovan Mitchell? What do you think it's going? So it was a domino effect for the rest of the league. And I weigh the Rudy Gobert trade to the Christian Kirk being signed for $18 million by Jacksonville. I said it's going to be a domino effect. Yeah, I think that's like, I literally think, because it's all the other owners are like, are you
a good comparison too. That's a really good comparison too.
Yeah, The price on everybody else just went up. I mean, y'all remember when Christian Kirk signed the contract, I literally hit the group chat and I was like, the price just went up on Tyreek Hill. They were close to a deal until Christian Kirk signed that. Tyreek Hill would still be a chief if Christian Kirk did not sign for $18 million. And so did Devontae Adams. I was like, bro, Devontae Adams' price just went to 25 easily. Like we're starting
AJ Brown signed for $100 million. So yeah, it resets the market. So now the Knicks are like,
owners are looking at their star player that they're looking at trading, Donovan Mitchell, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, whoever, and they're like, the price just went up. If that's what you just got for Rudy Gobert, if I'm Sean Marks, I'm like, well, I need 6 players and every draft pick you got until you bury your grave at this point, because we're talking about a top 3 guy. We're talking about a top 15 player of all time as opposed to we're talking about a top 5 center.
He averaged 30 a game this year, KD, on like 50, like he almost like he's a 50, 40, 90 type of player.
Bro, we're talking about a top 3 guy, a top 15 player of all time who still is playing at MVP caliber basketball. So
he
like
was at one point this season, when before the next season, he was the front runner for the MVP.
Exactly.
The season went crazy.
We're talking about a guy who's playing at MVP level basketball, and because of what Rudy Gobert got, like I just look at, I don't really care about that trade. Doesn't affect me none on either side. It's just the domino effect of like, even like being a Miami Heat fan, like with the possibility of getting Donovan Mitchell, with the possibility of getting KD, like having our names put in there. I mean, we're in there every year, but knowing that, I'm like, well, we don't have a package now. Since the price went up on Kevin Durant and Donovan Mitchell, we don't have a package. So once Rudy Gobert got traded, I said, well, that takes Miami out of essentially any guy we could trade for. I feel like our only hope, we talked about it pre-show, is like a Kyle Lowry for Kyrie Irving swap, which is something we heard floating around and thrown out there. But other than that, once that price went up on very expensive guys in the first place, I'm like, the Miami Heat can't compete with that. We can't give up 5, 6 players and 5, 6 first-round picks. Like, we just can't do it. Like, at that point, it's like, all right, we'll bring Donovan Mitchell, Jimmy Butler, and Bam, and then have what? Like, if we give up everything else, we'll have them and what? Like, all the free agents are gone. Like, free agency gone, so a lot of guys aren't even necessarily waiting. Like, key pieces aren't waiting, but, we could fill it with veteran minimum guys who are waiting to see what Kevin Durant does. No, you can't even do that. A lot of guys are already gone. So it's like you're gutting your team and hoping that 3 in G League guys, your big 3 in G League guys can win you a championship, and that just won't happen.
Yeah, it's crazy. And Small, I want to get you, on 2 more points before I let you go. Donovan Mitchell, Knicks, obviously that's heating up. What's your thoughts about some of the packages we've heard about Utah wanting, and do you think Danny Ainge finesses another team and gets what he wants? Because we've seen it before. Do you think the Knicks pull the trigger? Do you feel like the Knicks are pressured because the bad season last year? Do they feel the pressure of having to get a star, quote unquote, a star here, CAA client? We all know the ties with Leon Rose, CAA, and all that. Do you think? Just talk to me about that before you go, about that whole ordeal and then that trade potentially.
So I come from a place where New York is the biggest market in sports that I've ever seen have to operate like a small market because people ain't going there. They need the initial star. I mean, we talked about this with signing Jalen Brunson. Like, some people feel like he overpaid. I'm in that category.
We need to clip that. Whoever's watching, if Ken, are you watching? Clip that, because I like that. Well, that was good. That's clippable.
But I really think so. Like, I very well think that New York is, I mean, bro, they're the most expensive franchise in basketball, one of the most expensive franchises in sports, but they have to operate like a small market because they don't have a star for you to convince somebody else to come. So I think they have to get Donovan Mitchell. And okay, if I get Donovan Mitchell, the proposed trade that we would be talking about was what? IQ, Deuce McBride, Quentin Grimes, Obi Toppin, and 6 first-round picks, which leaves your starting
either like Derrick Rose or Fournier just to match the money. So
yeah, to match the money. So, but that leaves your starting 5 is Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, RJ Barrett, Julius Randle, and Mitchell Robinson. That's a competent starting 5. Maybe 6 seed, even play in, but I think they'd be in the 7, 8 as opposed to the 9 or 10. East is very deep, so it's really a toss-up between like 6 or 7 teams on where they could be placed. But I think that puts them in a conversation with, they're in the same with it's them, it's Cleveland, it's Charlotte, it's Atlanta, Like all those teams, like they're all in the conversation, and depending on how the season goes, injuries or whatever could put them where they're on the high end of that 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 or whatever. But you have to get Donovan Mitchell. And I know that sound like 6 first-round picks is really insane. And that is, in those 4 players, like you are going all in on Donovan Mitchell. But I would look at it like, okay, we'll be a good team this year. And then I look at it like 2023 free agency as of right now, as of right now, is projected to still be a really good free agency class. Granted, contract extensions can happen, but right now, still projected to be a really good free agency class. And with already having that star, Donovan Mitchell isn't a superstar, but he's a 3-time All-Star. He's an All-Star player. He averages he averaged 24, 25, 4, and 5 last year. So he's a guy, he could get you.
And he's a player, and he plays big in playoff games.
Yeah, and he's not the most efficient. Like, it does take a lot of shots, but I mean, bro, we've seen all-time greats who score at a high clip take a lot of shots. But so efficiency is, I value that, but at the same time, like I've seen guys be great and score inefficiently at the same time. Like, yeah, it took them 30 shots to score 30 points, but guess what? It worked and they won. So I look at Donovan Mitchell. I feel like the Knicks, man, I almost feel like they got to pull the trigger. Call me crazy. I'm not a Knicks fan, but you got to get Donovan Mitchell because y'all miss out. The Knicks miss out on every free agent. And I know they link every free agent, but every free agent that's linked to the Knicks sit down and have a meeting with the Knicks. I know it's also you do it for clicks and, hey, if you bring up the New York media market, like it's going to get, but at the same time, like Kevin Durant met with New York. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like he did meet with New York. So you can't say, oh, there was no chance. Like, well, if there was no chance, he went, the no chance was the teams he didn't sit down with. He sat down with New York. You remember when Gordon Hayward was a free agent? I know we look back now and it's like, who even cares? He was a big time.
Almost a Knick.
He sat down with the Knicks. He sat down with the Miami Heat. Like he sat down with the Boston Celtics. Like, so he was almost a Knick. Like, so you go to the guys who have meetings with the Knicks. They don't go. Why? Because they don't want to be that first star to go there and then have to play that recruiting role. Donovan Mitchell wouldn't have a choice. It's not free agency. He'd be getting traded for. Now he's the star. So now come next year or even 2 years from now, he plays that recruiting role. All right, I'm going to go get who wants to play with me. Like, I'm going to go get my guys. They're all friends, stuff like that. They have private conversations. He can tamper privately and say like, oh, yeah, you know, that's my guy. Let me see if you want to come play over here. He's about to be a free agent. Hey, make your way over here to New York. I just think guys are afraid to be that first star because if you don't get another one,
it's like
you're
kind of all over again.
Yeah, exactly.
Anthony all over again.
Exactly. And so for me, I think like he has to, like for me, I think you have to do it. And I know that's a crazy package, but bro, at a certain point, like if you're a good team, first round picks don't matter anyway. Like at being a Heat fan, I don't care about first round picks. Like we're picking in the 20s anyway. Sometimes you find a gym, sometimes you don't. Like, you know, you're a big draft guy, you and Walker. Y'all feel like we might have found a gym. I'm gonna love, you know, as a Heat fan, I'm gonna love this guy. But that type of guy doesn't necessarily drop or get deep undervalued every year. That's every few years. And then you're like, okay, he's a guy who fits perfectly with Miami. So if I'm the Knicks, I don't care about first round picks. I got 8 of them. They're all tradable. You're not going to be a bad enough team where you're like, okay, you can be a lottery team, but you'll pick at 10. You don't have a bad enough roster right now to be the Spurs, the Pacers. Like you don't have that kind of bad roster to be a top 3 pick.
That's a good way to think.
You know what I'm saying? So, but like, if I can't tank, like you tanking means you tell Randle not to play. You tell Emmanuel quickly, like you're going to have to sit guys for a whole year to tank. You're too good to tank and you're not good enough to win a championship. Go get that star and start build while he's entering his prime and build towards the future.
No. And that's you made a good point. You actually had me thinking during that. And so I'm gonna talk about Walker about that. But Mo, I know you got to go. I appreciate you coming on the show. You know, definitely we have more stuff talking about whatever all the craziness in the NBA going on. So thanks for coming on the show, bro. Quick before you go, tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, you can follow me at Mo_Cheese15 on Twitter. You can follow me at Up in Flames Pod on Instagram. You can follow me at Mo_Cheese15 on TikTok. We're in the TikTok world. We're promoting TikTok now. Yeah, you can listen to Up in Flames.
We gotta get with Gen Z, you know.
Yeah, you know, I concede to the fact like I'm the old man in this new world, and I got to go ahead and promote it. And then you can listen to Up in Flames anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, whatever. But I appreciate you for having me on, bro. And I'll keep watching the show as I'm getting ready, bro.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thanks for hopping on, Mo. But Walker, Mo just brought up some good point about the Knicks in that. I think what's different between this one and like the Melo thing, because that's the trade that gets mentioned the most with this, right? You're giving up a bunch of picks. I think it's a little different with this is like Melo came to in that trade, right, from the Nuggets, and essentially with no one else. Like Amari was there, but that's when Amari was getting the injuries, and we all knew Amari's knees were about to explode. It just happened a lot quicker than we anticipated, right? Everyone warned us, but we had to get the star because we struck out on LeBron and all these other guys, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, Joe Johnson, that free agency of 2010. What would be different in this if we were to pull the Knicks were to pull that deal is that yes, you would give up a bunch of nice young pieces, you would give up you would give up draft picks, but you just signed Brunson. You have Julius Randle still on the team. We won't have to give up RJ Barrett, and you have Mitchell Robinson. So I think if that does happen, and Mo just got me thinking about that. It's like, okay, yes, we give it, and I love draft. I'm not that person who's like, yo, just trade back draft picks. I'm more on like, you don't give up all your draft picks. I think that's kind of crazy because that can come back to home, especially when you're a team like that. When you're like, things can be bad in like 2 years, and that looks really bad. Like one of those, like the trades, like one of those teams that things can be bad. Like we haven't shown the competence in 20 years. So like we could be bad in 2 years. And like now Utah has the number 1 pick for like back-to-back years. But like a part of me is like, okay, if we do pull this off, I'm not going to be happy with all the picks, but it's like, all right, we still have our team roster won't be good at like it was with the Melo thing. So just talk to me about that, and then follow it up with the Rudy stuff and how you felt about that trade, because that was another trade. We didn't get to speak to you about that. So just talk to me about this, the potential of that. Do you like it? What should the Knicks do? What should Utah ask? And then follow up with the Rudy stuff.
I don't know. So with Donovan Mitchell, there's so many concerns I'd have from a Knicks standpoint, from a roster. Because listen, when I think about these types of things and hypothetical trades, like in my mind, I'm a team builder. I'm not like like I'm trying to win a championship.
I agree. I'm with you on that.
I'm a team builder. And so you have to figure out, because we've talked a lot about RJ Barrett's emergence and how does his emergence play with Donovan Mitchell as who is someone else who is ball dominant?
And he wants an extension too. Remember, RJ's extension eligible, right? He could have got an extension this year. They're not going to give him that. He just saw the 2 guys who went in front of him in the draft, Zion, who's only played 1 year of basketball over these 3 years, and Ja just get max. So he's going to want, and Darius Garland got an extension max, a rookie max too. So there's motivation this year for him. And so continue with your point, because I know what you're trying to say next.
Yeah, and so you have to figure out how you're going to balance the ball dominance of those 2 players, and then you also have to figure out how you're going to utilize Julius Randle if you're not going to put the ball in his hand, because he shot, I think it was 17.3 shots per game last year, and that was the most on the Knicks roster.
Yes.
And so you have to figure out how are we going to utilize him, and then also you've got Brunson, who you just paid $25 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
That is also not coming in to play, 5th starter.
Yeah, and not coming to be a 4th option or whatever.
Right. He's not coming to be a 4th, 5th option. And that's what he would be if you trade for Donovan Mitchell. And then also from a team building standpoint, I know that in the NBA, you cut your rotation to 8, 9 guys in the playoffs. But beyond that starting 5, you really get to a place where, let's just say hypothetically, because I don't think the Knicks will give up all 4 guys. So let's say hypothetically they keep Deuce and they keep Quickly. They keep the 2 guards. Mm-hmm. We'll say they keep just Deuce and Quickly. So those 2 guys are coming off your bench, and that makes up part of your backcourt. But where else do you go to sign competent players? I mean, you have to fill out in a regular season. Injuries happen. Guys have, just lingering things. And in order for the Knicks to compete for a championship, you have to be able to play your way into home court in the playoffs. You have to be able to play your way into favorable matchups. And I don't know how they do that over the course of a full season. A, with Tibbs at the helm running that starting 5 a whole lot. And then B, with just no depth behind those guys, to potentially, give those guys spells of rest. And if someone gets hurt, then everything potentially goes wrong. And so, you're not judging that experiment all on one season, but over the course of, let's call it 2 years. If it hasn't worked by, the trade deadline of year 2, you start to look at it and you just look and you say, Quentin Grimes is doing his thing in Utah, and we gave up our next 6 draft picks, or next 6 first-round draft picks. And that's the question I have for Knicks fans is, it's always like, well, we'll figure out how to fill out the rest of the roster. It's not as simple as it was 3 years ago where you just sign a bunch of guys on veteran minimums and just fill out the rest of your roster. The other thing that you're assuming in this scenario is that Donovan Mitchell can operate as a number 1 option and that RJ Barrett can operate as a number 2 option on a championship team.
Yes.
And I don't know that
that's still the thing. Like, you have to operate trying to win a championship, right? I think that's how you need to operate as a franchise. You just can't operate, all right, we want to go from, 4 seed 2 years ago. Last year we were not even in the play. And
I think there is so much.
You gotta operate as if you want to be a champion.
I really think we've caught a lot of this in the group chat. I think there is a lot of participation trophy in the playoffs type of energy going on with Knicks fans right now who just want to be in the tournament.
Yes.
To get in
there.
But
it's not like the NFL where you're in it and you have a chance to go all the way.
It's different. It's different
in basketball.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's completely different from baseball. It's completely different from all that
baseball
stuff.
Too. You're in it. In baseball, you're in it. You could be the wild card team, and you could go all the way to the World Series and win it. We've seen that plenty of times. And like I said, NFL, we've seen wild card teams win the Super Bowl. And even hockey to an extent, where we've seen 8 seeds go to the Stanley Cup and all that. But in basketball, if you're the 6th, 7th, 8th seed, guess what? You're probably not going to win a championship.
Exactly.
So it's like,
and so that's my thing.
Do you want to be there? Do you want to yes, it's better than not making the playoffs and missing it out. Yes, Walker, it is. But what's after? What's next? All right, what happens the next year if you don't?
Yeah, my question is when you take the first step and become the 5 seed, the 6 seed. What is the next step once you pay RJ? And then all of a sudden you got this massive.
You gotta pay RJ. Cap. Now you might be a luxury tax team and not even be a playoff team, and that's disastrous. And that's another thing, Walker. You just mentioned RJ. You're like, I know RJ had a really good, he improved, right? But if you look deep in those numbers, you're like, okay, he still needs a lot of work. Like, getting to the basket, he doesn't finish, and his effective field goal percentage is like 30 points lower than it was the year before, and it's like, it still needs to work on the 3-point shot was worse. I mean, he had some good months, but it's like, and I think that's the biggest. I think if Utah was 100% convinced on RJ, they'd be like, okay, we want RJ back. We don't care if we got to give him an extension. We want RJ back. We think he's going to be a star. They don't think he's going to be that dude, or else they'd be like, yeah, give us him. And, that's going to be another thing. You're going to have to re-sign RJ Barrett, give him 5 years, 150, whatever his rookie max is. And now you're going to have Randle on a team who just got $100 million plus, and you're going to have Brunson who's got $100 million, and Spida's on his rookie max. That's a hell of an expensive team to maybe be a bottom, 6, 7, 8 seed possibly. So there's a lot of.
How are you gambling on someone like Donovan Mitchell or RJ Barrett remaining happy with that in the current climate of the NBA? How
RJ could be like a 4th option making $25 million a year. One of these guys are going to be the 4th option making $25 million a year.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the first option. When the first option sees that stuff is not going well, and the first option sees that he is not winning with this roster, how are you gambling on the fact that everybody's just going to stay in place and give you like 5 years to build this thing through free agency? Why are they gambling on that? Why are you going to throw away? You've built up this core of young talent, And now you're talking about exchanging the entire thing, sans RJ, for one guy who is not necessarily a bona fide first option on a championship team.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we've seen him have individual games in playoffs. They haven't had success advancing in the playoffs multiple times.
And last year against Dallas with no Luka, like they could have took that and they didn't.
Yes, and they completely folded.
Yeah, and they folded.
And so I don't know how, if you're the Knicks, you are gambling on that with that level of draft picks and that level of young talent. And the reason that Knicks fans want that, in my mind, is because they're so tired of being laughed at and they're so tired of being so bad that they're cool with 4 years of being a 5 seed, if that's what it boils down to, because it means that they've been competitive for an extended stretch. And I don't think, it's fine for fans to operate like that. I don't think that GMs can operate like that. And we've talked about pressure and saving jobs and that type of thing with Leon Rose. And maybe that's what it is. But I think maybe, too, it's about appeasing the people who are buying your tickets and the guy who's signing your paycheck, and putting a star in the arena and then just being in the tournament and competing at the end of the year. And I don't think you can operate as a franchise like that. I just don't think you can run a team like that and make trades like that. And that's what I think that is for the Knicks, because I don't understand, like, if it doesn't work immediately. And I've talked to some people around Vegas who think that the Knicks with Donovan Mitchell are a mid-tier, middle 40s win type team. That's not good. Oh. That's not a great basketball team. That's a fine, mediocre basketball team. And that's not the goal. So, I mean, in New York, with the current climate, you're going to be able to trade for someone else. Wait for the right thing. And if you're going to trade for someone else or trade for a superstar, then it needs to be a guy that you feel like he's coming in and being a bona fide number one. Like, you can be like, okay, when I'm penciling in how I'm building this team, I can put this guy in the number one slot and be 100% confident that I know this is the guy and that he can operate like this in this market and be successful.
Yes.
And I don't know what anyone has seen from Donovan Mitchell outside of, he's had great individual performances.
Yeah, he's had his moments. He's definitely had his moments.
Show me where he has translated to winning and gotten his team deep into playoffs and made runs. And that's the thing, like, you have to weigh all of those things if you're the Knicks, consider when you're weighing up a move for Donovan Mitchell. I'm also of the opinion that the deal is getting done almost certainly. Like, I'm almost certain that it's getting done.
And now, and there's just a lot of factors, right? Because let's say it does happen. You get Donovan Mitchell, and now chemistry. That's another thing. Now you got to figure out the chemistry. And now you have a backcourt of two guys who are 6'1".
And then you have Jalen Brunson, who walks into Tibbs's office and he's like, "Hey man, you told me I was going to be initiating offense and kind of running the show here. Now all of a sudden you've got me running it with another guy who has to have
who needs the ball and is not someone who's proficient in off ball, type of actions and all that." So it's like, I worry about the chemistry. Yes, it sounds good, right? It sounds good, right? It's sexy. Yep. Donovan Mitchell, he's from New York. It sounds good, but I'm a little afraid of the chemistry. And this team could be really expensive, just like that. This team went from having all this cap space, and now you just re-signed Mitchell Robinson, like 4 years, 60. You're gonna have to re-up. You got to re-up RJ next year. You just paid Julius Randle. You just paid Jalen Brunson, and Spida's gonna come in making a whole lot of money.
And that's why, like, I get the whole pair him with another star thing, but I mean, you're betting on someone being willing to take Julius Randle for just because, or take
you have to hope that happens. Yeah, you have to trade one of these guys.
Yeah, and so you're betting on that, and I mean, what value does Julius Randle have to another NBA team?
None right now. And I was one of the few people that were like, I knew this would happen, like his play would regress, and I was like, they might have to capitalize while the price is hot for him, while he was playing such good all NBA second team and all that. But I just knew, but I also was like, they're not going to let him go because then they'll have no one, and then they can't sell after a 4 seed and a home playoff, series that, all right, we're going to trade the guy who led us there. Like it wasn't a good selling point, So I understood that, but it was like, he's going to regress now. And I didn't expect him to regress to this extent, but he's going to be, and plus they're not going to trade. Everyone wants him gone right now, right? Everyone wants him traded, but you're not trading an asset.
I'm telling you, the
There's
Knicks
no
would
market.
have to give up draft picks to
First,
get
yes.
someone to take.
It's
him.
like Russell Westbrook in a sense,
where
you
literally
have
like
to add
you would have
picks.
to call. You would have to call San Antonio. You would have to call San. Yep, that's the dog. You would have to call San Antonio and be like, and I'm using San Antonio or Indiana because those are the two teams that have the cap space to do something like that.
Yeah.
So you would have to call one of those teams and be like, listen, we'll give you Julius Randle and we'll give you an unprotected first round pick way down the line just to take Julius, and like, hey, we'll take back, just because we have to fill out the rest of the roster, we'll take back, like, I'll use the Spurs roster since I know what I'm talking about. We'll take like a Josh Richardson just so we have like another wing player. Like we'll take that, we'll save a good bit of money and whatever else, but like I just like, and that's even a stretch. Like you may even have to give up an extra first if the Spurs are giving you back Josh Richardson. Like we're giving you a first to take Julius's contract, and then also giving you a first because you're throwing in a useful player on a good team. Like
it's something like
and
that.
that's the type of thing you run
keep
into.
this team in like this with the
and when you're running into
RJ.
that type of issue, like you're talking about building a roster, you have to try to acquire guys like that as well, because if you don't, then there's no depth. And so you just end up in a place where when you're building for a championship type deal, if the Donovan Mitchell thing doesn't work, the Knicks aren't competitive again until like the mid 2030s.
Yeah.
Like there's a scenario where the draft capital thing works out that way. And yes, if it doesn't work, they'll probably sell off pieces and get draft picks back. But there's a scenario where they don't, and they ride this thing out and they're not competitive for a really long time. And I just think when you're weighing that type of decision, I would want more security in my mind that the guy I'm trading for is a bona fide number one.
No, I 100% agree. And like they have a lot of decisions to make coming up, because like I said, RJ's, what if the RJ stuff doesn't? What if he regresses because of all these additions?
Like I think he is.
And there's a world where people are like, okay, they're not.
There's RJ Barrett's one of the most polarizing players in the league right now, because there's a lot of people who think he's not very good, and there's a lot of people that think he's like a future superstar.
Yes, and even
granted,
Chris Bolton even said, and Chris Bolton's a Duke fan, your guy, he was like, yeah, I ain't crazy about RJ, and I could see, and I'm not one of these Knicks fans that are going to be like, oh, you crapping on RJ and all that. I see both sides. I see the side where,
and I'll say this,
he's getting better, but I also see the side where I look at the inside the numbers. Sometimes you got to dig in. You got to do some surgery and dive deep into those numbers and be like, okay, yes, he averaged 20 a game. That's cool. That's a nice benchmark, but it wasn't as efficient. He doesn't get to the line enough. He still does. Shooting is not there. He doesn't finish well. It's like I said, a lot of things that still need work. And yes, he's a young player. He can get better, of course. But do the Knicks see him as that? Because that's going to come up, and they're going to be like, oh, 5 years. Okay, is he?
And I'll say this. When you have polarizing players like RJ, where there's very far out opinions on either side, the actuality typically falls somewhere in the middle.
Yes.
So RJ is probably not an all-star. RJ also probably does not suck. RJ probably is
both are true.
Fine. RJ is probably just a fine player on a good team. But that's not good enough for the Knicks right now. Like, you can't pay him the money he wants for that and trade everything for Donovan Mitchell.
Yes,
you can't do that.
But Walker, we're kind of like where the Spurs are right now, right? You guys have a lot of good young players, but you don't have that player, right? You don't have the guy that you'd be like, okay, that guy in a few years is going to be it. You might just Primo and all that, but yeah, you don't even have an RJ right now, like where you're like, okay, maybe like he just averaged 20 and he's 21, like. So the Knicks have that, and like I said, it's going to come to a head this year if RJ regresses. If he regresses, because listen, beginning of last year and this year, it got off to a rocky start, and then he wound up playing better. But
And how long and how many games does he get before public opinion turns against him again?
And it could, and that's what I'm saying. Like everyone loves RJ right now, but do you love RJ at $30 million a year now? It changes.
Right.
It changes. Money changes everything, right? He can go from me. Everybody loved Tobias Harris. Oh, he's super underrated, all that. Then when Tobias Harris got max money, like, he's kind of overrated.
But no, and that's the thing is like that's how you have to watch RJ this year. Like you have to watch RJ through those eyes. You're like, all right, am I watching a $30 million player? I every single time I've watched RJ, and of course, like I say this, and like Knicks fans will be like, oh, you don't watch Knicks game. Shut up. Yes, I do. And like the answer every single time has been no. Like I think he's probably a good player on a good team. But I think he's a middle of the road guy on a good team. Like I think, and that's fine. Like that's not a bust.
That is fine.
That's just not a. It's
a good player. But that's what he is. I think, and I agree with you. I agree. I think he's a good player. I don't know. He may be one of those. He maybe makes one all-star.
It sucks that public perception makes that not okay.
But you know how Knicks fans are, bro. Like you've seen.
Yeah, but I'm not even blaming him specifically. No. I'm talking about the league in general. Like when you get drafted that high, being just a good player is no longer acceptable.
But that's the thing. Like when you're drafted top 3, and you're playing for New York, there's more expectation, right? Everyone wants him to be 25 per, but they want to be John Morant. And then who goes in front of you?
That's the other thing is the guy who went in front of him is like. Has single-handedly rebuilt a franchise from the ground, basically.
Yes.
Like I mean, he's turned that into a contender, not by himself. That's discrediting a lot of people in that organization. But he is the centerpiece of what has rebuilt.
He's a franchise player, right? Even Zion. Yes, we all know Zion has not played a lot of basketball, but he's a franchise player. Is RJ in that? Even Darius Garland, he's an all-star this year. Is he might be more of a franchise player. RJ a franchise player.
I don't think Darius is a franchise player, but I think he's closer to it than RJ is.
Yes, and that's what I'm trying to say. Like Darius, I don't think he's like true number one guy, but he's maybe ahead of it. And I remember draft day that year, like there was some people like, to the Knicks take Darius Garland at 3? And at that point, that was kind of crazy. I think he had the knee injury, right? I think he had hurt his knee.
Well, he got hurt at Vandy, and then at Vandy, also the other problem was that he was at Vandy, and
he was at Vandy, And I think those factors in.
Yeah, and so like his injury went under the radar, and B, he was injured.
And the injury, like I think maybe he was healthy, but that was a thought, and it's like, oh no, you can't. You have to take RJ because RJ had the production at Duke and all that, but. Is RJ a franchise player? And I think that's the biggest thing with the Knicks. And I know we talked about the Knicks, but it's so polarized because, and you see all the grades for the Knicks and free agency, everything's incomplete because this is going to dictate a lot of things. And then going forward, okay, is RJ, you're going to give RJ the max? You got all these guys making $100 million on the team. Are you going to give him 100?
I think RJ getting the max and trading for Donovan Mitchell, and I think that's the most likely outcome. By the way, I think that that's a losing formula. I think it's very much a 5-6 seed for however long the players are willing to cooperate and stay around.
And for some fans, that's cool because the Knicks have been incompetent for the last 20 years. We have one playoff series win since making the finals against Spurs.
Not okay.
Yeah, and that's not okay with me. Like I'm seeing the bigger picture. Like, yes, I want to make the playoffs. I want to play meaningful playoff games. But like what happened 2 years ago, being the fourth, I'm like, it could go bad the next year. Like things aren't just going to be, we're going to go from a 4 seed to the 2 seed. We didn't do anything significant enough to go from a 4 seed to being, a top 3
luck 4 seed at that. Like let's
back to being a 4 seed. We didn't do anything like that. And like it was fool's gold, and I'm thinking like, did that hurt us really? Because like we were better than what we were, but we're not as good as we thought. And being in that, it's kind of tricky. And now you have a regime that might be a little under pressure. They Leon and Worldwide West and Scott Perry, they might be feeling it. And it's like when you get GMs like that and organization front offices that are feeling it, they do sometimes irrational things. And I don't know. This is I think Donovan Mitchell is a really good player, but I agree with a lot of things you said. Is he a true number one, and is he going to make the New York Knicks go from no playoffs to being at least a conference finals team? And
I'm just thinking that young
know.
core and 6 draft picks get you a lot better than Donovan Mitchell. And also, when is Danny? And also, I'm skeptical about dealing with Danny Ainge. Like, that's a whole nother part of this process. Like, if he accepts the trade, you're likely getting the raw end.
Yes, and everyone always says like, "Oh, if you get the player, you win the trade."
No,
I don't agree with that.
Ask the Brooklyn Nets how they feel about that.
Exactly.
Last time, and specifically dealing with Ainge, and they got 3 players.
Yeah,
they got an entire core.
Yeah, they got their whole. I mean, look, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. Like they got a lot of guys from that trade. So it's like, I don't know. I'd be skeptical. I know we're hearing rumblings that it could happen, and there was an offer initially that the Knicks rejected. I mean, we're talking about
but like
in
the offer that got published, they said the Knicks were like, there was some thoughts that night that it was getting done.
It was getting done. It was eventually,
which tells me that the price doesn't have to come down a whole lot. And I think Ainge shot for the moon and is going to settle for the stars.
Well,
because like he's like, if I can get these dumbasses to consider this, then when I come down to what is initially, like, like he's going to go and be like, if I can get these idiots to consider this price and them get close to accepting that, then I'm going to come down to something that is still above what I actually want by a good bit, and I'll get them to accept it because they think they're getting a deal. They're thinking I'm compromising and coming more their way. Really, I'm just settling still above my bar, but it's just a little less above my bar, if that makes sense. Like, he's shooting so far beyond what he would probably willingly accept. If I'm the Knicks, like there's a price where it's like, okay, this is the final offer. I'm not going past this point. If you want to play Donovan Mitchell with that team next year, fine, go for it.
Yeah,
cool. And Utah's probably like, okay, and we've got a problem now.
Yeah, and
because like, I mean, what? Like, I mean, we can't. They can't play Donovan Mitchell with that team next year.
No,
they can't. I mean, you're purgatory at that point.
No, you can't, and they're embracing the tank, right? It is, they Royce O'Neal got traded to the Brooklyn for a first round. Like they're tanking. They're Danny Ainge wants to do it his way. He wants to restart. He got there last year. He wants to restart. He wants to do it his way. He wants his imprint. He sees Utah, and like that's where you don't want to be. You don't want to be stuck, right? They had number 1 seed, but they got bounced in the second round. You don't want to be there because then you're stuck, and now you got an expensive team that gets bounced in the first round against Dallas, and you don't want to be there. And that's my thing with the Knicks. I don't want to be in that situation where, yes, making the playoffs is good and all that, but there's only so much of getting bounced in the first round year after year, or maybe making a second round appearance that you can take. The goal should always be building your way towards a championship team. And this is the big question, whether this move will put them in the right direction to be a championship team. I know Knicks fans want to make playoffs, but this is something that you got to think about. And but you can't go both ways. You can't, if it does happen, you can't just be like, all right, we're going to give you the bottom tier of our roster and a few picks. It doesn't work. You got to give up a lot to get them. And big questions in New York. I know we talked a lot about, but it's such a polarizing situation that's going on, because it could really how do the Knicks look going forward? This, it's a lot. So let's get to the DeAndre Ayton stuff, because that stuff has been really crazy. How that obviously everything that happened in the playoffs with them, 8 in the last game where they got absolutely obliterated by Dallas.
Like, I mean,
it was embarrassing.
Halfway through the second quarter.
It's one of the most embarrassing losses in NBA playoff history, especially for a team that won 65 games.
Yep.
Coming off a finals appearance where they were up 2-0, and like the championship was right in there. Like, they had the meme with the fisherman, like, oh, you almost there. Like they were this close. Like they had the series, they blew it. They come. You don't see teams like that blow it, come back, and are better. Right? They win 65 games. Booker's great. All these, all NBA, all this stuff. Chris Paul's playing good. Kel Bridges, all these, and then they implode in the playoffs against, and then the whole Ayton stuff with Monty Williams happens, and no extension for him during the season. He wants his money, and essentially we thought he may be part of a trade package to get Kevin Durant and all that, and then he goes to Indiana and signs the biggest offer sheet in NBA history. And like we talked about this before, like all the provisions and all that were like, all right, we have to put everything in this contract that will make the Suns be like, all right, we're not even gonna bother. And that's what they did, right? And then all for the Suns to like literally when the offer sheet happens, like you got 48 hours to match, and it was a matter of it was 100
10 minutes.
It was 3. Like I think Woj said 3 minutes it took. Like, so that's 100 what? I can't do math. 180 seconds. That's how quick it was. And I'm sure DeAndre Ayton must be like, what the heck? Like, you was like, what? Like, he's just flabbergasted because, here's a team that clearly did not want him. They've said they don't think he's a max player. And they just re-signed him as a max. Now they're paying him less as if they were, a year less, and I think about $3 to $5 million, less, per that they would have gave him if they would have given him the contract originally. But it's a very odd situation because I can't think if you're Ayton that you're happy right now. Like you can't be. I guess you're getting your money, which is good, right? Obviously, we're not crying for him that he's making all this money, but I'm just saying it's still going to be a bit uncomfortable coming back to a team that doesn't want you, but they just re-signed you simply because they didn't want to lose an asset, essentially. So like, how does that dynamic work? Does it start with Monty Williams? Like, and that relationship was fractured. But like, how do you feel about this issue? Because it's very, very crazy and weird.
Well, and like you have to go in and attempt to make that right, but now it's been in public that you don't think that he's good enough to earn the max.
Yes,
and now he's on the max, and you can't trade him.
Yes,
and so it's just one of those weird things where I mean they're for sure going to tough it out for this year, and then maybe they work with Ayton with 3 years left on his deal and move him. But like, I don't know how this year goes well at all because you have to try to work and get the best out of Ayton that you can get. And, Phoenix isn't happy that they're paying him what they're paying him. Ayton's not happy that he's there. Indiana's pissed that they didn't get the player they wanted.
Yeah.
Like all of these things, like it really just didn't work out for anyone. It was just kind of a disaster class. And, I really don't understand. If I was Phoenix, I would have been trying to work in that 8 hours, trying to work some sort of sign and trade with Indiana. Like, be like, all right, let's just get what we can get out of this. Maybe get Miles Turner, and then we'll use the money that we didn't spend on Ayton to go find some other key player to throw in
Duarte, could have got Miles Turner and Duarte, some type of that. That's a solid, return. But it's wild. I mean, it's crazy to think the Suns. That championship window we thought maybe was greater, and then what happened in playoffs, and it's like this is going to be a very we got a declining Chris Paul. They just gave how much a max to Booker. They got Bridges. They gave an extension to. He didn't really show up in the playoffs, especially offensively. There's a lot of questions. I think 65 wins. I don't see that happening. I'm going to question the chemistry going on because I really feel like Ayton does not want to be there, and that's the weird thing about restricted free agency. Like they don't want you, but they can match it, and like I think that dynamic is going to be something that we're gonna have to see. And like I said, he can't even get traded to Indiana. Even if you want to be in Indiana, he can't get traded there for like a year. So Indiana gets screwed because they want him, they're willing to give him the money, and he can't even go there. And that's the wild part about this whole restricted free agency. Like and we've seen this a few times in restricted free agency, but that's just the business of restricted free agency. Like teams can match and they match pretty quick, and it's crazy. They don't want him, they don't think he's a max player, but yet they matched in a matter of minutes. But that also hurts their chances of we hear the KD stuff, that hurts their chances of getting Kevin Durant, because now they have to wait, and that's a whole nother thing. And And so that transitions to me to Kevin Durant, and we'll end it with that. I think he's going to end up back in Brooklyn. I think now the Suns is off the table now, and the other team he liked was Miami. Miami does not have the assets to get him straight up. They would have to essentially get a third team involved, but now the another team that was maybe involved is just out of the picture now in Phoenix. So there's no team that is going to give up the pieces, right? We just saw how many picks go to in the Minnesota deal for Gobert to Utah. Like Kevin Durant haul is probably an even more historic haul, that Bobby Marks wants to return. I think he ends up back in Brooklyn. I think he's going to have to end up back in Brooklyn.
We saw the toss proposal with New Orleans where it was like, yeah, like give us, oh God, I can't remember the number. It was like Ingram and Larry Nance and then like a couple firsts, and the Pelicans were like, no, we're good. And when you get teams like that being like, now we're good, you're not getting what you're asking for. And you can't just trade Kevin Durant to trade Kevin Durant. You may have to just tell Kevin Durant, be like, hey, man, listen, like, we're not cratering this franchise for you. So sorry, man, you're going to have to suck it up.
Like, exactly. I think that's going to happen. I think the trade market for Kevin Durant is not that nobody wants Kevin Durant. Obviously, every team would love Kevin Durant on their team. It's not really easy to get him because you would have to essentially gut your roster, and then you have Kevin Durant and just a bunch of guys. And I love Kevin Durant. I think he's arguably the best player in the league. Him or Giannis, to me, that's a toss-up right now. But let's not act like he's actually, been able to do a lot with just whoever. Like he's not LeBron, where LeBron could take me, you, Mo, and take you to the finals. It's Kevin Durant. It's not that, that level. Still, obviously, an elite player, but I just think the market. I think the Nets thought the market was gonna be red hot. And teams are gonna be lining up, giving up everything, and that's not the case at all. Teams are just like, okay, KD, it's KD, but he got injury history. He's 34, or he's gonna be 34. All right, and we're gonna give you all these picks. Now, the only thing that would be good for those teams is that they have him under contract. It's not like he's a year left and like, but that's the trade market isn't there for KD. And the team that he wants to go to, the number one team, well, they put themselves in a situation and now they're out of the question till January, so like I think he stays in Brooklyn. I don't know about Kyrie. I don't know what happens with Kyrie now. I think they want out with Kyrie. I don't think they want Kyrie at all. But he has no. It's kind of like with Julius Randle we talked about before. He has no market. There's one team that can make it happen, but they have nothing of value that Brooklyn wants. And does Brooklyn want? If you bring back KD, do they want Westbrook? And just to get a 2027 or 2029 first round pick?
I think there's more than one team that could make it happen where it makes sense. I think Toronto makes a lot of sense because, and they've been on the phone and talked about that. But I think the problem with that is that Brooklyn is not going to say yes to a Kevin Durant trade to Toronto if Scotty Barnes isn't returning. And Toronto.
Well, that's the thing, and I'm glad you brought up Toronto because and that was the thing Mo was going to talk about too before he left, and I forgot to bring it up with him, but we talked about. There's obviously the two teams he wants to go to, Miami and Phoenix. Probably can't happen. Miami can happen, but there's a lot of other factors. Brooklyn's going to want Bam Adebayo. They can't get Bam Adebayo without trading Ben Simmons because you can't have two guys that you trade for on rookie max deals. So because of that weird thing. So you can't make that happen unless you get another third team and you trade Ben Simmons and get Bam Adebayo somehow in a 3-team, 4-team trade. So
finally allow Ben Simmons to become the future Spur that he deserves to be.
So you got people have brought up the Pelicans, obviously, because they got a lot of good young pieces, right? They got a player in Brandon Ingram who's been compared to KD, who's very similar, right? 6'11" guy, long arms and all that. And then I just blanked out on the team you just talked about. What team did you just say? blacked out on the team.
The Raptors. We were talking
The
about
Raptors, yeah, Toronto Raptors. Sorry, if the Raptors aren't willing to trade Scotty Barnes, they're not gonna. Brooklyn's not gonna. So like, but then you would have to sell KD on. Now they could send him because KD doesn't have a no trade clause, so they could trade KD to Toronto if Toronto says, yeah, we'll trade Scotty Barnes, we'll give you Scotty Barnes. Brooklyn's gonna do that if they get everything and they get if they get Gary Trent and Scotty Barnes and whoever else.
It would look like Gary Trent, OG Anunoby, and then future draft picks probably. Yeah. And like you would just have to be convinced that OG is going to develop into something more than what he currently is.
Yeah, especially offensively. So like,
and maybe like Gary Trent, OG, and like Precious Achiuwa.
Yeah,
and then like future draft picks, and like that's probably as good as Brooklyn's going to get. I think that's why you saw like a lot of odds on Toronto cratering because it was just like Phoenix viably can't do this without Ayton, and the Nets don't want Ayton, so. Like Toronto's really the only logical team to me that can really make something happen straight up.
That's the only team that can do something.
And again, so we talked about Danny Ainge winning trades. I don't really see Masai making a trade that is going to like hurt his franchise and a trade that he's not going to win. I just don't see it.
Yeah.
Like, and that's why I don't think Scotty's available for that type of move. And especially because these GMs and these presidents of basketball operations, they know what the market for these players is. They know what other teams are thinking. They know what other teams want to do.
Mm-hmm.
He knows that the only way Kevin Durant is getting moved if he's getting moved to his team. So he's not going to allow a move to his team for anything more than what benefits him.
Yep.
And and for Brooklyn, that's not good enough. So
no.
And that's okay. Like I think Brooklyn is doing the right thing by playing hardball and being like, if we can't get what we need to get to keep this franchise relevant and be in a better place after all this, then we're not going to do it.
And this could possibly have been the move from the jump. Like we really don't want to get rid of KD. And
yeah, they're on vacation now.
Yeah, like we're just gonna ask for a package that we know we're not getting a return. And that could, I'm not saying that's the case, but that could be like eventually we're not going to get what we want, right? Because we're asking for a lot. Like two all-stars. Like not a lot of teams have two all-stars that you can just give up, and young players like that, like a Scotty Barnes.
We don't even have one.
Yeah, like some teams don't even have one, star, like maybe all-star, let alone two. Two is, that's, and the two if you got two all-stars, they're making probably a lot of money. So that's not even feasible. So I think he ends up back in Brooklyn. I think they just run it back. And I think you have to get everyone in a room and be like, hey, you need to figure this out. All right. Ben Simmons, you need to play. Kyrie, we only got you for one more year. Can you just be
normal?
Be normal for one more year. Like there's no more vaccine stuff, right? So you don't got to worry about the vaccine stuff unless you go to Toronto. All right, whatever. That's 4 games out of the year. All right, unless we play in the playoffs.
It's 2 games out of the year.
Oh yeah, 2 games. Yeah. 4 overall, but 2. You have to go to Toronto twice. But like, race out. KD, you want it out. Okay, we know everything. A lot of the stuff that's happened in Brooklyn was because of the virus, right? The COVID and all that. So a lot of stuff is not because of them. It's because of the outside stuff that is not controllable, right? So we have to give him that, right? That is a huge factor. Like a lot of that stuff, like Kyrie didn't just not want to play basketball. He just chose he did not want to get the vaccine to play basketball. And it is right. That is his 100% right. And a lot of the New York rules, because it was weird because Bradley Beal is not vaccinated, but he's allowed to come to New York and play, but Kyrie can't play. It didn't make sense, and that derailed their season, right? Because they were at one point, they were playing really good basketball. KD's an MVP, with front-runner MVP. They're playing good ball, and even with Kyrie and all that, with Harden and KD. Then Harden's like, oh, he ain't playing? All right, I got to get out of here. They trade him and all that. So, like, you have to get them in a room. Joe Tsai, Bobby Marks, KD, Ben Simmons, Kyrie, and be like, hey, KD, you're not getting traded. We did not get what we want. We wanted something. What we wanted, we couldn't get for you. Sorry. All right.
Nobody wants you.
and the market is not as hot as you think it is. And the two teams that want you, they can't get you. So that's gone. All right. We could trade you, but you're going to go to New Orleans or you're going to go to Canada. All right. So Kyrie, just be cool for 1 year. Because then you can leave. Go wherever you want after that. We got you for 1 more year. Ben, just freaking play basketball. Like, and if you could tell them, hey, we have a championship team, guys. We have a champ. We're still if KD, Kyrie, Ben Simmons, they all come back, the odds for Brooklyn to win the championship are going to be up there, right? They're going to be up there with the Warriors in Boston. You guys have a championship team, a championship level team. Let's work this out for you. And if it fails, guess what? Kyrie is gone. All right, Kyrie's gone, and we could figure out with Ben Simmons. But for this year, hey, we got to run it back, and that's that simple. All right, KD, we can't trade you. We cannot trade you. You got 4 years left on your contract. All right. We tried to. Guess what? We didn't get what we want. Guess what? At the end of the day, you got 4 years left on your contract, bro. Figure it out and let's play. Kyrie, stop being crazy just for one more year. And Ben, play. And if they can get them in the room and get them to vibe, then you got to run it back. And that's the only way. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to happen. I don't know. Maybe they still want to, loading Kyrie, but there's only one team I think that Kyrie can realistically go to that even wants him right now, and I think that's the Lakers. But you can't have a team with Ben Simmons, Russell Westbrook, and KD. Yeah. KD, he might not even show up. He might just be like, whatever, like he'll pull a Kyrie, or Ben. He might pull up Ben Simmons and be like, I ain't playing.
I don't even know what the vibes would be like with Russell and KD in the locker room for the first time since OKC.
And then Ben Simmons, like that's just not a. And then what the problem that team is too is no alpha. They needed like a PJ Tucker type player to be like, hey, you, get your ass over here. Work this thing out. You guys are some of the best players in the world. Get here and let's work. We have a chance to win a championship. That's the problem. KD's not an alpha. KD just wants the ball. And I get it. But KD can control a lot of this stuff. He is arguably the best player in the world. He can control a lot of things. And he just be like, whatever happens, happens. And that's fine. I get that's fine. But your legacy is on the line. Nobody cares about Kyrie's legacy, right? Because at the end when the Kyrie's career is over and everything's settled, we'll be like, oh, he was the crazy guy that was just, he didn't want to play and all that. But yeah, remember he hit the shot against, the Warriors in 16? But with Kevin Durant, he's always going to have he's a legacy player. And this 3 years have hurt his legacy a bit. Because guess what? The team he left, they just won a championship. And I just think he needs to have more control as you are Kevin freaking Durant. I think he needed to have more control and be like, hey, we need to figure this thing out. Hey, Kai, be more of that leader that you need. And if he doesn't do that, then guess what's going to happen? If he comes back, they're going to have another down year. And then people are going to talk about him, he needed to do only way he won championship is because he went to Steph Curry's team and all that. And then Steph Curry just won championship without him. I don't know. But I think it comes back. They come back and they're probably going to be title favorites. But I just don't know how that chemistry is going to work. But I think they're going to have to run it back another year, at least one more year. Yep. Because there's no market for him, and the two, like you said, the two teams that he wants to go to can't go to, and the other two teams we just mentioned, if I'm New Orleans, I wouldn't do that. I like what we have, especially if Zion gets healthy.
Yeah,
they Trey Murphy looked good in summer league. You got Herb Jones. Got some pieces. Who they took this year? Dyson Daniels.
Yep.
They got some pieces. Jackson Hayes came on a little bit late last year. They got something there. I wouldn't want to mess that up. I know it's KD, but I want to mess that up. And Toronto, too, you got something nice there. Scotty Barnes, Rookie of the Year. Fred VanVleet was an all-star last year. Craig Trent is a bucket. They OG, Boucher. They got some guys. So that market I think it's dried up. And I think KD's is going to have to, him and Rich Kleiman are just going to be like, we're going to have to go back.
Yeah.
And we got to make amends, though. But everyone's got to go and get in a room together in Brooklyn and be like, hey, all right, I did one out. Because I didn't like what things are going. But, hey, let's figure this out because we're gonna have to figure it out. Because are you gonna play and have all this turmoil again? Like there's no vaccine rules no more. So that's one big thing that's out, right? So there's no more. Kyrie's gonna be able to play. Kyrie wants to play. It then like he didn't want to play. It wasn't the injury, because that's the big thing with Kyrie has been injuries, right? He's always getting hurt. He got hurt 2 years ago, and they could have been a championship team 2 years ago. You know, when KD's foot was on the line and all that year. So like, there's no more of that. Kyrie may be on a like, hey, in order for me to get the bag again, I got to be a good soldier this year. I can't bitch and complain. I just got to play ball. And Ben Simmons, man, if he wants his stock to get back up, you know, because even after back surgery, he's smiling and like, oh, I'm walking. Like, it's just a lot of bad optics with that. They need to fix their optics. Their optics are horrible right now, and they need to get in the room, fix that, all that. Because if not, then they're gonna be another disaster this year, and it'll be the biggest disappointment in NBA history. This what happened, because they already lost James Harden and all that, and they don't have their pick, so they got to make it work. So
got to figure it out. Got to figure it out.
They have to figure it out, Walker, or else it's going to be a disaster. But I think they're going to run it back. But that's going to be it for this show. This was a lot of fun. We got to talk about a whole bunch of things, NBA free agency, trades we liked. You know, we got Walker to talk about the Knicks for like 40 minutes. You know, you know that. Yeah. We got talked about Miami, talk about the Spurs and all that. They're embracing the tank, right? They're gonna embrace the tank. You think? Yep. They're embracing the tank, and they'll probably get the #1 pick, and they'll get Victor Wembanyama, and they'll be a dynasty for 20 years. So that's how they do, right?
Yeah, that's how we do it.
What happened? Dave Robinson breaks his foot, and they get Tim Duncan, and then 20 years later they got 5 rings. So that's gonna happen because teams like that just know
figure it out
how to finesse the system, right? Then they'll have my team can't figure out nothing, but we'll see what happens. Spida, we'll see Donovan Mitchell's a New York Knicks. You know, we'll see what package they give up, or do the Knicks stay firm and be like, we're not too much. You know, Ayton situation, that's going to be something that's going to be interesting to see how that goes. And then the KD drama in Brooklyn. I think he's going to be coming back. Walker thinks he's going to come back, so we'll see what happens with that. But on that note, thanks for everyone who's tuned into the show. Like I said, we had a lot of fun. Had Mo, VP Off the Ball Network. Mo Murphy was on with us. Like I said, hell of a show we had, and we got more. We're gonna have more in the works. A lot of things coming up. But before we sign off, Walker, tell the good people where they can find you, and if you got anything coming up.
Yeah, so I mean, first off, just check off all the good work at offtheballnetwork.com. Yes, and follow everybody over there at the network. Just lots of stuff coming up. Lots of stuff that's going to be new heading into football season. We're kind of in that dry period for sports right now.
Yes.
But yeah, so check out all that stuff. You can follow me on Twitter at WalkerBailey8. And I'll kind of be working on some stuff ahead of football season, and we'll just kind of see where it goes. So
yes. We got some potential big news coming up. I'm going to keep that in the wraps until we get the, sign the, get the T's crossed or whatever that's saying. A T's crossed and the I's dotted. Is that
yeah?
That's saying? I think I got it right. All right. I'm not the brightest bulb, but I get something right. But got some things coming. Make sure you follow OTB_network on Twitter, Off the Ball Network on Facebook. Follow us. Make sure to leave us a sub, a like on the YouTube if you're listening, watching. Like I said, follow Off the Ball Network, OTB_network on Twitter for some potential big news coming up that we're really excited about. So we'll hopefully that happens soon. And you can follow me at Off the Ball Pod on Twitter, Instagram on Off the Ball Pod. You could follow the show. I got the podcast on Off the Ball podcast, and also streaming on both our Facebook, on my Facebook Off the Ball Pod, and on the network Off the Ball Network podcast. I'm Off the Ball Network on Facebook. I'm most active on Twitter on Off the Ball Pod. You can follow my personal. I forgot my personal handle. I don't even know it anymore. But go follow us. Like I said, make sure to follow Walker, follow Mo Murphy, follow everyone at the network. We got a lot of good things. We got some new writers. I got some good content coming up, and we got a lot of things in store. A lot of big things on the horizon. So excited about that. So on that note, be well, be safe, take care. Like I said, make sure to follow everyone at the Off the Ball Network. We got more NBA stuff coming up. NFL season's about to get, going. So we'll dive into the football season very soon, talking, you know, about Walker's Titans, talk about my Giants, some optimism finally.
You know, Giants Titans is week 1, right?
Yes, and Giant. So me and Walker gonna be getting into it week 1. So we'll have a bunch of football stuff going on. Baseball off season is obviously in full swing. Betting it isn't, you know, we got a lot of good bettors. You know, Walker bets. I'm not good at it, not very good at it. But you know, Ken's good, and we added a few more betting guys to the network. So on that note, be well, be safe, take care. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching the Off the Ball Network. And be well. Take care, guys. Thanks.